Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Lewis from Because Bitcoin. First off, shout out to our Discord members, our newsletter subscribers, and all that good stuff. If you're here from Twitter and this is your first time on our YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe button. We're going to be doing a lot more YouTube live streams and all that stuff, formatted YouTube content, YouTube shorts. We're also going to be going live on TikTok with Blockchain Boy. And if you guys want to check out that stream, go ahead and check out our previous live streams here on our YouTube channel. And today we're here joined by Big Country Tuck, 6'2", 250-pound monster who owes me a bench press video, by the way, brother. What's going on with that, man? Come on, man. Let's get serious, man.
It's coming. Don't worry.
We're also joined by the main man, Edward, head of our YouTube content and all that good stuff. We're also joined by Tommy, Tommy, bro, I'm not sure if you're going to be joining us on our gym videos, man. You know, now that we're integrated with the herd within the Ox community with with Leslie, I'm sorry, not Leslie, with Leslie and Coach Bruce, you know, we got to step it up and not only up our protein intake, but also up our gym video intake or output. Sorry about that. But anyways, we're here joined by special guest Kush, who, as you guys know, has been in our Twitter spaces, throughout the last like 6 months or so. And his theory is pretty interesting, talking about the melt up. And, we spoke about the melt up here on our YouTube channel with David Hunter. You guys can check that out as well. And Kush, what's going on, brother? How are you doing? And feel free to introduce yourself. Oh, and shout out, by the way, to those in our Discord community who got into OX with us at a penny and a half. Today, it hit an all-time high of 4.5 cents, a solid 3x in a little over 2 weeks. So you gotta love it. You love to see it. And obedience is rewarded. So shout out to our loyal Discord members and newsletter subs. So without further ado, Kush, the stage is all yours, brother. Great to have you here, man. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, man. I appreciate you having me on. For those that don't know me, my name is Cooshi. I go by Kush because it's easier because the phonetic spelling of my name is impossible to pronounce. I've spent my career in the medical device industry, moving from startup to startup, and have kind of taken an active role in my own finances where I see the deck stacked in my favor heavily. And one of those first times was back in 08, 09, where I kind of took control, outside of just the passive 401k investing. In March 2020, I did the same thing. And I kind of look at the market today, starting back in last year with the nasty correction that we had, and kind of going into October is kind of the culmination of those types of times in history, right? The 08, 09, where things were awful and everyone was expecting them to continue to be awful, and the herd's expectations weren't fulfilled. And same with March 2020, where the world stopped, the economy stopped, right? And so herd mentality takes over, that part of your brain that's responsible for fear. Once that's triggered, it overtakes logic, and we saw a lot of that, right? Not to go off on a political tangent, but that doesn't bleed into just economic in markets, but that bled into our lives, right? And we saw that clearly as well. And so in situations where I feel like I've got the ability to potentially see through a narrative and see through that fear and kind of rationalize what's in front of me, is where I think I perform the best, right? And I will throw a caveat out there, right? There are times where I've gotten it wrong too, right? Like November 2021, I wasn't in anything margin related, right? And that's what I use as my gauge for when I'm the most confident, is when I'm playing with margin and I put a significant percentage of my portfolio in that bucket. And I don't recommend margin. I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take anything that I'm saying as financial advice. We're talking small percentages of overall portfolio, and you've got to be willing to lose every freaking penny of it. So just want to throw that out there. But in times where there's asymmetry, I feel like if used properly with risk management, you can potentially get some outsized gains. And so 2020 was one of those times. 2009 was one of those times. I was 3-4x on my NASDAQ margin positions from March, April, all the way through the beginning of 2021, and I exited those positions. And I exited them. I wasn't in them at all anymore, right? We're talking about 15%, 10-15% of my portfolio that grew substantially, but utilized that to acquire more Bitcoin. And this is because Bitcoin. And so 2020 really got me down the rabbit hole of what Bitcoin is as an asset, and what it is in terms of how does that work into what we were seeing go on across the world with the amount of money that was produced and created in such a short amount of time, right? 40% of all the world's money created in such a short amount of time in 2020, and what the ultimate implications of that were, not just financially, but in all walks of life. And so I admittedly got into my Bitcoin awakening late, right? I purchased my first Bitcoin in 2020, late 2020, right? I missed, the first, what was it, 4 times? The first 3x of that move off the bottom. And so I started acquiring it and building my position and, probably acquired most of it under 24, 25-ish, right? But getting back to my initial point, back to all-time high, 69K in November 2021, here I am thinking, here we go, right? This is what happened before, and so it's going to happen again. We just broke all-time high, and the law of what has happened in the past is going to happen again, and I was expecting it to take off from there. Right? Well over 100K, could even see 300-400K. Was I making any type of margin bets to that effect? Absolutely not, right? We're talking, hey, I'm in spot Bitcoin from way lower, and this is where I'm hoping it's going to go. That didn't happen. And so when you talk about kind of learning and evolving, I think you do that every day. Right? You're doing that every day. You're doing that with new information that you receive, and you're trying to make yourself better. And so, looking back on what's kind of transpired, not just with Bitcoin, but with the markets in general, I look at last year as a major correction. And I've been saying this, and I've been posting charts in reference to this idea, not just with Bitcoin, but with the TradFi markets for a long time, right? And I posted on October 12th, I was taking my maximum margin position in TradFi that's allowable to my risk parameters. That was the max. The next day, the market bottomed, and from then it's been a pretty good progression up. And so, what led me to that belief then is kind of the same thing that kind of leads me to my belief with what we're seeing with Bitcoin, and the potential for a lot of people to be surprised and to be caught off guard with the expectation, the two expectations, the paths that are seen as the most probable forward, and the path that it ultimately takes, right? Which is the path that typically is the least projected by the masses. And so what do I mean by that? So right now, right now, let's just talk about the state of the Bitcoin market, just from a fundamental, like 10,000 foot view. So we've got the most rate hikes that the market has ever seen in a short amount of time that started last year, early last summer. Okay, so it dealt with that. It dealt with 3AC. It dealt with Luna. It dealt with Celsius. It dealt with BlockFi and culminated with FTX. Okay. Through all that, you've got the amount of Bitcoin that hasn't moved in a year at 69, 70%. So here's a market that's just telling me there's a market of fundamentally very entrenched believers that these are opportunities to accumulate, and I'm not parting with my coins at 30, at 20, at 50, at anything in between, all the way down to 15. I mean, you had plenty of opportunities to exit the market, and the market is designed to reward those that are the most convicted and shake out the least convicted, right? And the prime example of that is the action in the NASDAQ for the last 2 months versus Bitcoin. Bitcoin was doing this, right, for 2 months, and the NASDAQ was doing this. And so that's another excellent opportunity in my mind to chase out the last of the the last of the late arrivals, right? Those that bought maybe past January, hoping for the run to continue, and it just kind of stalls out, and maybe it's going back down. So where are we today? We've got, the BTC on exchanges down to 2.3 million, so 11.7% of available supply. You've got this dynamic where the number of long-term holders is really high, and the key here for me is they didn't sell with everything that we just talked about. And you've got the last piece of this puzzle, which is what the market is expecting. And before I get into that, guys, go back to late 2020, early 2021, right, where Bitcoin was around the same price. And what was the market expecting then? Right? The market was expecting, here we go, right? It's game on. Tesla just put it on its balance sheet. And we're off to the races. We broke previous all-time high, the 2017 level at 19,000 and change, and it's game on. It's a new bull market and a new bull leg. That was the expectation of the market. And it happened, right? To a degree. We went from 30 to 40 and change in about 2 weeks, and then had our correction, and then back up to the high 50s and low 60s very quickly. Today is maybe the most pristine setup we've ever had, where, again, this is my belief. I don't know this to be the truth, but my assessment of the market is 40 or so, 45% or so of the people look at this as just a bear market rally, and we're going back down, right? Just along the same lines as what a lot of people are thinking with stocks. Then you've got the bull camp. That's like, new bull market just started. Okay, so it just started, and it's going to revolve around the happening to kick it off and then go parabolic. So that camp is positioned such that we still have a lot of time to accumulate. And my contention is that accumulation is done. The last year has been accumulation. And the data to support that is what I just went through, right? When the U.S. government on the 13th or 14th of March sold 9,800 Bitcoin, and the price of Bitcoin was up 15% within 3 days, that's accumulation, right? Someone was there ready, and these are big entities. You've got smaller entities that are, acquiring 2,000 to 3,000 Bitcoin a day. And so in my mind, accumulation is done. And what follows accumulation is expansion. And when I look at the cycles, maybe I'll share. Let's see if I can do that. Post disabled participant screen sharing. I can't. It's okay. But when I look at,
if you can do that.
When I look at, you think I can now?
Oh, my fault. Yeah. I forgot it makes you ask for it. There you go.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does.
Great.
All right. So can you guys see this?
Give me 1 second. Make sure I can OBS can see that really quickly. Because that looks like I have it cropped out here. Might be a little bit of a fix here I have to do on my end.
Let me know when you can see that, and I'll just kind of talk through it if you can't, to keep it going. So
you're good now, man. Kush,
yeah.
how would you see the possibilities of, the melt-up theory like occurring? Yeah, but right, because the way I kind of gauge it, right, if something like Apple or Nvidia can add in like Ethereum's market cap within 2 trading sessions, if we were to apply that to crypto, we could see candles that are reminiscent of, if you remember, brother, I think it was on a Sunday, we pumped from 28K to 42,000 in like 15 minutes. It was a true example of a God candle. So what would you say to that theory, instead of like, exploding to all-time highs in the next like, sorry for that, guys. Excuse me for that. Sorry. Just got a call. How would you say that theory playing out, like those small candles playing out over time instead of like, 20,000, 30,000 candles on Bitcoin? Because from the looks of it, right, the current melt-up theory that you're suggesting is, Bitcoin's what is it, like 200,000, and the next like
I've got a medium price of like 165 sometime before the end of the year to keep it like a broad forecast. As high as 220, 240, 260, as low as 100 and 110. And Wabi, or Lewis, I'm sorry, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible, and I have no idea what's going to happen. This is just what I believe is going to happen based on everything I'm seeing and the way that I analyze through mathematics, angles, cycles, sentiment, positioning. This is the way that I'm viewing this cycle, right? Like if you could take a look at, can you guys see this chart now?
Yeah, it should be up now.
Okay. Like if we just look at these cycles, I see very clear patterns here, right? If we go back to the beginning, we've got the first cycle that lasted, a little over 300 days, hit an all-time high, and then it hit its low, and the next cycle was a little bit longer, right? 735 days from the low to the cycle high, and you've got clear relationships with this Fibonacci extension at 4236, right? It goes over, deviates over, back tests, and then takes its fifth wave to the parabolic high. And I look at these cycles as major impulse moves, right? And if I look at you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and a fifth wave move, which is your most powerful, your steepest, and by angle it's the steepest as well if you compare it to the previous impulse waves. What happened to the next cycle? Well, the next cycle was longer than the previous cycle, right? 1,085 days, 93x, so it's diminished returns from the previous, and it did the exact same thing, right? It got up to the 4236, deviated over it, kind of came back for a back test, and then explodes up for the fifth wave. And I see the same thing with this structure that we're dealing with right now. 5 moves, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And this to me is just corrective. And why do I say this is corrective? Well, we can throw up some charts of MicroStrategy, Riot, those things that went parabolic, and they made lower highs, right? And I think the derivative, the futures that kind of came out at the same time, maybe help kind of prop this up as a deviation. But this to me is just a flat correction into a low here, and our real culmination of this bull market, which started in December of 2018, hasn't ended yet. And it would also align with what happened from a mathematical perspective on the last two, and the cycles getting longer, right? So again, 1,700 days and change if it ends, prior to the end of the year, and about a 50x return. So yeah, I view your what you're saying, Wabi, is most certainly a possibility. But with everything, with the confluence we're seeing in everything, right? And what's another example of that? You've got global markets, right? What are they doing? You've got the dollar, and what I think is more relevant than even the halving is, let me go up here and pull up this chart, is the dollar. And I truly believe that Bitcoin, and you can speculate to who created it, but I look at it more as a derivative of and hedge on dollar strength. And so, and why do I say that, right? So here we're going all the way back to 2017, and in similar places as we are now with the dollar, and this is just, you guys are traders, right? This is just like, look at this as a 15-minute candles, right? One big range high, range low, range high. How do you trade this on a 15-minute, right? It rejects, you're going to range low, right, is your target. This went to range high, it broke out, right? Deviated, a huge deviation. And now we're back, and this is a few days old, but now we're down here, 102, near 102. We're back under the range high. And so my target here is range low. And so, and what's funny is, if you look at any of these spots in the dollar where there's potential, really important reversals, that's where you see the FUD, right? We got the Coinbase SEC news right here. We got the FTX news right here. We got the Dow issue here. KuCoin hack happened right around here. And so those events kind of all preceded major movements in the dollar. And what did BTC do in these situations? And this is another reason, the point of confluence, right? Nothing alone is going to make me say, here's why I think this. But prior to the last leg down in the dollar, this is when Bitcoin had its biggest moves, and alts, right? So we're talking from this point in the dollar, 10x Bitcoin to range low. Bitcoin here from this same kind of point after the top correction, 7x from these points. So, and this move, look at this move. This is parabolic, right? This is more parabolic than any of these moves to range high. So I think in terms of rate of change, we could see this collapse in the dollar in the short term accelerate to a level that wasn't even seen here. And so what's my expectation for Bitcoin to do? Not 7x from here or 10x from here, but 3, 4, 5, 6x potentially.
So I actually have a question for you. So when we were at Bitcoin Miami, one of the recurring themes that we came across was that whether someone was a speculative investor or a long-time holder or professional trader, the answer everyone always gave us was, we're expecting Bitcoin to make lower highs. Based on from what I'm getting out of this, you're saying that the time for accumulation is over, and the time that Bitcoin is going up is now. Is that more or less what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Let me just share another a post here that kind of illustrates that better than I can talk about it. So where did I post this? I think I posted this a few days ago. If I look at just an accumulation schematic, here we go. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay. And this is kind of going according to Wyckoff's accumulation schematic, and he's got distribution schematics, accumulation schematics, which kind of points to the psychology of what accumulation looks like, and not only price but volume is really important in this equation. And this is the last year. And if you look at an average accumulation schematic up here at the top, I mean, how close is this to what accumulation looks like according to Wyckoff? And the key in Wyckoff is in kind of distinguishing these accumulation patterns is, for me, the spring, right? The spring is the tell. And the spring is this one last deviation on a lot of volume, capitulation volume, right? And so where do we find capitulation volume? We see that expressed in actual volume. And so here's that FTX candle, right? This stands out above the rest. So that's capitulation to me. That's a spring to me. And this entire schematic just screams to me, and I could be wrong, that accumulation is complete. And another hallmark of accumulation coming to an end in this last phase D that I've kind of superimposed here is volume kind of coming down, right? Just overall volume coming down, but price is climbing out of the accumulation range. And so we've got market structure on this side of the accumulation schematic that's now shifted, right? We had lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, right? We had our event, and then we broke structure. We've got higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. And the beauty of this to me is like here on this wick right here, we had maximum FUD, right? So at key points in market structure where the market could go one of two ways, right? So, and it really could have. At 25K, if we broke down 25, 24 and closed a weekly under that 25, market structure changes, doesn't it? Guys, I mean, if we look at it objectively, this market structure changes, but it didn't. And it didn't when everything in the kitchen sink was thrown at it. Coinbase, SEC.
Yeah, and a bunch of those, like, I call them like the laser-eyed cult. They were all making spaces just 24/7, saying the most outlandish things ever. And typically, man, like when you have these low T groups get together and talk about how CZ is going to jail, CZ this, CZ that, throwing shade at Brian Armstrong, how we're all going to be buying Bitcoin on Fidelity and Schwab, it always ends up being some sort of local bottom. And they always end up being the biggest fades, right? And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Suzu and Kyle Davis are back on the scene, man. If you saw OpenX's recent announcement with 3AC Ventures, that to me gets me insanely bullish. And Kush, if you saw some of those charts from 2021, they know how to paint a chart. So that gets me wildly bullish. And I do think this is a super cycle, as I've been saying all year, right? And I think there's a probability, right, that we could end up running to all-time high going into the halving or just right out of it. So some really exciting times, man. And if you notice on that chart that you have, Kush, on the 1 week, it's a good thing that you brought up the Coinbase chart as well. If you notice that November weekly candle, it's the biggest red weekly in all of Coinbase's history. And then if you go back even further to right around like early June, that candle was put in a 4-hour candle. It was the largest 4-hour sell candle in all of Coinbase's history. As a matter of fact, going back to the November candle, during that week, there was like over 200,000 Bitcoin that was sold within like that 48 to 72 hour time period around the whole FTX implosion. But some really interesting stuff to see, man. And even the chart that you have now, I kind of feel like that giant green candle that preceded right after we hit 19.7, that massive green bar. I kind of feel like we're about to put those in should we cross 32K, because there's nothing really stopping BTC after it blows through 32K until like 38, 37, right before UST went to zero.
I agree with you, Lewis. I posted that today, right? Like I've been kind of tracking this a couple different perspectives, but coming up to the candles that we saw last week, that really screamed to me the 2021 summer, right? That price action that was just garbage, and it looked awful. It just kept bleeding down and bleeding down and bleeding down, and then all of a sudden it deviated down and then scooped back up, reclaimed, and it was gone. And that's kind of what I was kind of equating what we were seeing in the last 2 months coming into what we saw last week. And so now the question is this, right? Is we're getting, and as you get into expansion impulses, the news starts getting good, right? Okay, the news starts getting good. And, if you're trying to trade Bitcoin here, you're trying to outsmart yourself by like a factor of 2. It's like, you should go the opposite of the opposite of the opposite of the opposite. And you're just running yourself around in circles, right? Where you've got now a $9 trillion asset manager, a $4 trillion asset manager, basically telling you that they are interested in getting into this space on a major scale. And so the question then becomes, and this kind of goes back to my theory on this market kind of concluding pretty quickly, is what does a smart money do? Do they wait for the right? Are you waiting for the moment that the ETF is approved and then you're going to acquire? And when I mean smart money, it's like, how many people or funds or wealth funds or asset managers or family offices out there have 0% exposure that want to up it to like 0.5%, right? 0.1%, something that if they lost doesn't mean anything, like they don't care about. And are those the type of people that say, let's wait until these ETFs start getting approved? Or do they just say, you know what, this thing is showing impressive strength, let's put 0.5% in? And that's the type of thing in an environment where people aren't selling, where you've got a supply dynamic like you have right here that it's like a haystack and it's soaked in kerosene and you throw a match on it. And then all of a sudden you've got even the bulls saying, because this is all positioning too, right? All the influencers on Twitter that think that we've got till 2024, 2025, that reflects positioning as well, right? Have they maximized their allocation right now? So once a snowball like this gets rolling, Bitcoin could get repriced really quickly. And to your point on NVIDIA, right? $180 billion in market cap in 2 minutes after hours, after they release earnings. That's not $180 billion that came in, right? That's just repricing. That's someone saying, I'm not selling my share, and the price goes up so that you can take the share from me. And so that could have been 30 times less money. Like the amount of capital that's required to make these moves in a repricing is really minimal. But it can have a huge effect on market cap, right? So you could see Bitcoin go to $52,000 in a week. Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me at all. And you could see it make this move in the next 2 months. That wouldn't shock me either, right? So I think to kind of sum up my thoughts here, I think the market is very, very offsides in terms of the amount of time that that people think that they can accumulate. And accumulation, in my mind, in my opinion, I could be wrong, is over. And expansion is next. And during expansion, we're going to see bullish news. And you guys saw that CNBC clip. There's like 2 of them, right? Where I couldn't believe my eyes. Like the hosts are
Kramer
like
was crying, brother. Kramer was crying in December, dude.
Right, he was crying in December, but now even they have guests on and they're defending it, right? With Talib the other day, I mean, you're at a point where the fiat system isn't going so well. When one of the reasons why Bitcoin shouldn't work is because it's not great at laundering money. Did you guys hear that? He said, well, one of the reasons why it doesn't work is because it's not effective at laundering money. So that's a use case. I mean, it's crazy, right? Some of the things that come out. And so now it's now even the mainstream is starting to get in its corner, which again can be a real bullish catalyst because the news in expansion tends to be bullish, and that's a good thing.
Kush, real quick, let me ask you, what do you think about a dump into the halving? Because I'm going back through the BLX chart and I'm seeing every halving about 160, 170 days before the halving, there's on average a 30 to 50% correction. So what are your thoughts?
I think anything is possible, Hagrid, but I think that I think the day of using, what's happened in the past as a way to forecast what's going to potentially happen in the future, with all the machines and AI, they're so far ahead of us, right? Like it takes all that stuff. And why didn't we go to all-time high in November 2021 when we break previous, that's what it does, right? And so when I think about those types of things, I just say to myself, the market is supposed to be, the exponential gains moving forward are supposed to be experienced by the least amount of participants. And those that experience them are the ones that don't do anything. Literally, don't plan for like what's going to happen next month, or you've accumulated what you believe is value and you don't do anything, right? You just accumulate when you see the price of something is a value to you, and you don't do anything at all to it. I learned that lesson. I told this jokingly on Spaces a bunch of times, but in 2009, one of my early lessons was with Crocs, right? I bought some Crocs at like $1, and I'm like, in 4 months, it tripled. I'm an investing genius, right? I'm going to sell it, and because of what I just saw in the pattern in the chart, it's going to come back, and I'm going to rebuy it, and I'm going to double my position, and I'm going to be, I'm the best investor in the world. Well, 100x later and 10 years later, that never happened. It never happened. But what I learned from that was when I saw something with exponentiality and with Crocs, I'm like, those things are going to be in every house, right? They're cheap to make, they're durable, they're going to be everywhere. And so they've got 0.02% of the market now. They're going to have 5% of the market, 10% of the market within 20 years. So lesson there was accumulate value and accumulate as much as you can, and just don't do anything. And that's the same thing here. Like, could it happen? Absolutely, it could happen. But am I going to try to make a trade, forego what I see as value now for the potential for something else to happen? Not with Bitcoin, I'm not. Maybe with some speculative trading stuff with smaller percentage of portfolio. Yeah, like that's like to have fun with and try to outsmart. But with Bitcoin, I realize I'm not going to outsmart it. That's why I don't trade it. The only exposure from a derivative standpoint I have is through options, and those are either going to expire worthless or they're gonna come to fruition. So that's all I can say, man.
Have you been playing the miners at all?
I did in the last, so that was one of my NASDAQ positions back in 2020. Riot in and around like 2.5, rode that up to like 40 and change. Didn't catch the 80 top. But right now, no, it's just through call options with MicroStrategy. But from just a structural perspective, like like Mara right now looks beautiful. Looks like it's going for an impulse up, a third type wave. And Riot looks good. Hut looks great from just structural perspectives. I did own some Hut back in those days as well. But yeah, so definitely a fan of that as a way to is a form of leverage, right? It's a form of leverage without putting on leverage is the way I look at them.
Yeah. We had Hut 8 on. We had them on the show. What, 3 weeks ago, Wabi?
Yeah, a little over 2 weeks ago.
A little over 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and I got interested and took a position, and the timing couldn't have been better with Hut.
Oh, that was really good timing. And that chart, just from a macro perspective, looks like it just that's this one massive base, and it's just breaking out of that base. And that was an underperformer the last couple impulses. So. And these things never again, like they never do the same thing twice, right? So Mara underperformed through the first top into the 60s and then outperformed into the second, right? Whereas Riot did the opposite. Riot outperformed in the first top in the spring and then made a higher low or a lower high, into November. Whereas Hut could be the one that actually, truly gets parabolic here and breaks previous structure. So that's one to keep an eye on too.
Kush, man, when you bring it back to stocks that did 100x, I remember in middle school, I saw Domino's Pizza.
I didn't do it, Lewis. Let me just clarify. I did not do 100x. That's what I'm
Oh
trying
yeah,
to.
I know.
I
But
missed out. I missed out on 100x because
yeah.
I was trying to be too smart.
Yeah, and I remember being in middle school, man, and my whole theory with Domino's Pizza going crazy. And I've always looked at the stock market since like middle school. And my whole theory of like, Domino's Pizza is probably going to be the best performing stock was that around that time period, like 2010-ish, 2000, like right shortly after the great financial crisis, right? My whole theory was like nobody is doing as much marketing as they are. They were all over YouTube, they were all over Twitter, they were all over Facebook as well. And they had like, the whole pizza tracker thing. And they were the first movers when it came to that. And I thought, Domino's Pizza is not a food company. They are a technology
A tech
company
company.
that supplies
Yep.
food, right? And that's how I view like, certain like tickers in crypto, right? Like Ox, right? I don't consider the open exchange token just a ticker. I consider it a a herd of a cult community that is bullish on certain market makers coming back and uniting people under a brotherhood of macronutrients and lifting heavy iron,
It's a
right?
social token.
Exactly. It's a social token. It's a social token.
GCR used to talk about those, man.
Exactly, dude.
To have our first like opportunity to see if
yeah,
if it would play out.
Like you guys, like that's a prime example. You do your research and you find something that's going to be the next. By the time the herd, my friends ask me about Ox, let's say in a year.
Oh gosh,
will be 1,000x. I mean, right? Like that's the whole point. It's like, do you want to be early or right, or do you want to have validation? Like the herd is there to validate what you're doing is the right thing. Being early, seeing Domino's as a tech company and saying like Lululemon, the same thing. I never bought any stock in that, but I've been wearing this stuff for years. And just things like that in your life where you say that is something that I can see, everyone owning or being the future of whatever. Like being early is the key, and also doing nothing when you're early is the key. Like the four shareholders in Amazon that haven't sold anything. One of them is Jeff Bezos, right? Only 3 other people have rode whatever that X is, whatever, the 1,000X, right? Like only 4 people participated in that. And what did they do? What was their trading strategy? Do nothing.
Yeah, I remember doing that. My biggest fumble from last cycle had to be Phantom. And Edward can attest me to this, by the way. I did a report on Phantom and I think it was like the summer of 2018. And I remember when it launched, and when it launched on KuCoin, it launched 90% below its ICO price. It had a market cap of like 3 million. And I remember getting close to 20 million Phantom tokens. And I sold it at a 3x, just over 10 million in market cap, thinking I was a genius. And, lo and behold, that bag, man, bag would have done wonders. But
that's such a great illustration. And
it happens all the time too, man. When we get into the habit of like, trading excessively with our like, HODL positions, right? And I remember even doing that with Luna. At some point, I had like close to 20,000 Luna that would just get reduced over and over again to get into other positions. And my whole target on Luna was always, sell this bag at 100, sell this bag at 100, and it hit 100. But by the time I get 100, I only had like probably like a couple thousand Luna tokens instead of like, the significant bag that I held early on before. And I think like if you have a strong core belief within a narrative, you should see that through. And I think that's the biggest lesson that the 2020, 2021 cycle taught me is to not like trade my HODL bags, right? Like with OX, man, I am not touching that thing for another 2.5 years, man. It's like, get your make it stack and just let it do its thing, man. You know
do
what I'm
nothing.
saying?
Yeah, it's hard to do, and I don't necessarily feel so bad on some of the things, because the reality is 99% of people, myself included, couldn't hold through. Like I couldn't have, I wouldn't have held from, if I bought Bitcoin in 2011, right? And let's say I bought 10,000 coins. You think there's any chance I'd have 10,000 coins today? No chance. There's absolutely no chance. It's just human psychology isn't built to withstand that type of volatility. And so, I think that's the best lesson, is something you're convicted in. Just the less moves, do less, right? Because by the time we get information, it's not actionable, right? And this is why I was saying in October and November, like, all the information that we're getting isn't actionable. All the information we're getting explains why things sold, why they did what they did for 6 months. That's the explanation. It's not actionable as to what is going to happen in the future, right? And that goes for anything, like, things that we're hearing on a daily basis from the Fed and inflation. That's why you never even talk about that stuff. That's not actionable for me for the future. That just explains what happened in the past. And if you're using all these different current information inputs to make decisions on trading with substantial portions of your assets, it's impossible, right? It's impossible. So
yeah, what's that saying that goes, show me the chart and I'll tell you the narrative, or something like that?
Yes, the news, exactly.
Yeah.
Show me the chart, I'll tell you the news. Exactly, right.
Is that how you trade, or is that how you position yourself in everything that you look at to invest in? You just ignore the fundamentals.
That's how I look at, most of my core position investing is in Bitcoin, right? And it's the majority. And all my entire strategy with Bitcoin is just to acquire when it gets further away from value. The further it gets away from value, I try to buy as much as I can. I've been accumulating as much as I could for the last year. And then the smaller percentage is just, fun stuff to try to get, more exposure to cash. Not for now, because I'm pretty well invested, but for, when things get euphoric again. If we get this move in Bitcoin and in the stocks, that's when I'm going to be getting cautious. That's when I'm going to be getting cautious and increase my cash position. My cash position was deployed down to basically zero into October, right? Like, I'm going to be most aggressive when people are running the other way. I'm going to be the least aggressive and most conservative when everyone is jumping in. Like, here's a prime example of why it sounds silly, but one of the prime examples of why I sold my NASDAQ positions in early 2021 was, I've been telling my friends for, the entire 7 months prior, like, here's this amazing time to be an investor, right? Sharing charts with them. They finally started buying these things in January, February, right? Like, they bought Riot at 20 and so that's a signal to me. Like, that's a signal when the retail starts coming in, is a good signal for me to start getting out. And so I plan to use that as hard as it may be, because Lewis, what you said, that's going to be the narrative potentially if this happens. Let's say Bitcoin gets to $150,000 before the end of the year. The narrative is now going to be super cycle, right? Super cycle. Everyone's coming. You got these ETFs and Edward, to your point, I wouldn't be shocked to see an ETF approval within 2 months, or a Ripple ruling that's favorable, or someone disclosed that they put Bitcoin on their balance sheet, or just some major news that's cooking. But I can also say that when and if this happens sooner than a lot of people are thinking, that the narrative then will be, what? It's a super cycle. Balaji said we were going to 1 million in 90 days. He was just a year off. You know what I'm saying? Like, that stuff's in the universe now. It's planted, and it's in the back of the brain, and that stuff's going to come out to the forefront, where that narrative will be, the dollar is going down. The dollar just hit 89, right? it's collapsing. It's what he's saying is happening now. He was just 6 months off, right? And so that narrative will come back. You'll hear super cycle. You're going to hear, so it's at one. If it's at 150, we're going to 500K after the halving. And I will most certainly be positioning for that not to happen. I'll tell you that right now.
Kush, man. So outside of markets, man, what do you like to do for fun? Because, man, all of us here, we've been in markets for a number of years now, but we all know that if you don't have something to exert that passion in other areas, right? Like mine specifically is powerlifting and strongman, and I feel that the aggression and discipline that I use to stay solvent in this market, I have to apply that somewhere else. If not, I will just become this basement goblin that's just neurotic and 24/7 on social media trying to find who does not agree with my market statement so I can debate them all day. I feel like if you're in financial markets, you need something to exert that same level of tenacity, right? Because to be in these markets, it requires a level of discipline and thorough research that many people are too lazy to tap into. And that's why we have things like high yield savings accounts. That's why we have, you know what, let me just park my money in the Dow Jones. Let me just park my money in the SPX. That's why we have that, right? So for yourself, like, what are some hobbies that you enjoy doing? What are your passions outside of markets and getting in touch with these communities like ourselves?
So this is most certainly one of my passions. I love talking about. I love kind of charting my ideas. But this isn't my full-time job, right? And I'm not a trader. I've made 10 trades over the last 8 months, right? These are just long-term swings when I feel like the odds are in my favor, and I've been accumulating Bitcoin. My day job is real passion. I work for a startup medical device company. I've got a team of reps on my team that I engage with every day. I'm in the field with, and I really enjoy doing that. There's a lot of parallels to that and kind of how I view Bitcoin. Right, we're a technology company that's tapping into the innovators in the market, right? The 2%, and we're trying to figure out how to get the message to the next 15% and what that adoption curve is going to look like. But outside of that, I've got a 10-year-old daughter who's the light of my life. She's getting into sleepovers and whatnot. So it brings me a lot of enjoyment when she has her friends over and I can kind of host them and they can go swim in the pool. I like golfing with her. She loves doing that with me. In the winter, skiing. I'm in upstate New York. In the summer, just kind of relaxing, enjoying time with the family and my daughter. And but between that and keeping an eye on the Bitcoin price, that occupies my mental capacity in my day job.
Great stuff, man. Love to hear it. I think this is a good place to wrap up. We're about to hit the 1 hour mark. So if you guys enjoyed this conversation, feel free to hit like and subscribe to keep up with all of our YouTube content, and all of our links are down below. If you guys want to get in touch with our inner circle community, feel free to check out our newsletter and our Discord. And shout out to our Discord members again. We slayed that dip that we had a little over 2.5 weeks ago. Killed it with plays like Ox, INJ, Optimism, and quarter two was absolutely phenomenal. We hit some good AI plays, and some of them managed a little over 10x and some a little over 100x, like Pepe, right? So if you guys want to get in touch with a community that's really in tune with not only the news events that occur in crypto, but also more of, the degen trading and, macro type holds for the long term, feel free to check us out. All links are down below. And shout out to Kush as well for taking the time out of his day to come and talk some shop. Shout out to Big Tuck. Shout out to Edward and Tommy, who are all in this video. And we'll be back tomorrow here on YouTube for our market check stream. And we're also going to be going live with Blockchain Boy on TikTok. And, after that, we're going to be going back to Twitter Spaces. But, going into July, we're going to be focusing a lot more on YouTube. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of myself on here. And if you guys enjoy this, once again, feel free to subscribe. And Kush, thank you once again, man. And hopefully in our next conversation, we can get into some specific tickers outside of, the big names like Bitcoin, and indices like the S&P and the NASDAQ, man. I always like getting into, the individual tickers, right? Because even though the NASDAQ is up, 30+% year to date, some of these stocks, man, right? Like HUD 8, they're up close to, 250% year to date. You know what I'm saying? And, when we spoke to Michael Green on Spaces about 2 weeks ago, he had mentioned that some of the call options on Nvidia in early January aged to go, up over 100x, and he's like, makes you want to be a TradFi boy, doesn't it? And it kind of does, man. And I think like, something I've been pondering about is second half of the year, if I can get a good entry on Coinbase stock. Even though I don't really think I will anymore, I think Coinbase has had so many things thrown at them. That stock just refuses to retest its low. But I think something like Coinbase Leaps would be phenomenal. And if you look at the market cap for Coinbase, it has such a low valuation compared to some of these altcoins. It's astronomical. And I think there's going to be a great repricing when it comes to that. And, with each bullish cycle, there always tends to be some sort of face, some sort of hero, right? In 2017, you had John McAfee and like Andreas Antonopoulos or Roger Ver, right? And then 2020, 2021, you had Do Kwon, Andre Cronje, and SBF. And, that later half probably CZ. And I feel like the next bull cycle, I think Brian Armstrong is going to be, the next face. And I honestly think Coinbase one day is going to touch Apple's market cap. So you're looking at well over 100x, right?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Well over 100x, because I do think Coinbase is the Apple store when it comes to crypto, right? When you download that app, it shows you tutorials. It has the cleanest UI. You're able to interact with a lot of these decentralized applications. You're able to get an in-depth perspective on what cryptocurrency is that you're just not able to on, say, like a Fidelity or a Charles Schwab, right? Like, I feel like a lot of people are overthinking when it comes to these, like, oh man, the big boys are coming because they're going to buy through Fidelity. And it's like, what makes you think that they didn't have stake in it before, right? If you look at, I believe it's called the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, JP Morgan has a seat at the table. What makes you think that some of these institutional heads don't have personal stake within these assets already? That's sort of my theory with Coinbase and all that stuff. So, Kush, if you have any closing thoughts, man, feel free to go ahead, brother. It was great.
No, man. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to discuss kind of the way that we see the market and, kind of learn from each other. And, because the show is Because Bitcoin, the brand is Because Bitcoin. I will just say that, if you've accumulated up to this point, try not to do much, right? There isn't much to do. Wherever we go from a price target perspective, there's always going to be news, and that's just designed to kind of shake your convictions. I think we're at the beginning of something here. And so look forward to coming back on when we're above 40K, buddy. So hopefully see you next week.
Oh, God, man. Oh, gosh, man. My bags would love that. So, Edward, if you want to give any closing thoughts, man, feel free to go ahead and we can end the stream.
I mean, I just want to say I appreciate you having us, being on the stream with us here. Very insightful, to get your perspective on Bitcoin. I would say very different from what I've heard from everybody else say. I think I want to say you're one of the few or first guys I've heard that says that Bitcoin has officially bottomed out here. So I find that very interesting, So I guess time will tell. We'll see how things kind of perform from here on out. But yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, this is a good place.